Hello everyone. I went to the ESL writing class in the public library. It's going now for 2-hour sessions, 5:30 to 7:30 every Monday, and it was very well attended. It was full to overflowing. 25 people was the cap for registration. A few short of that showed up, but there are about 10 more on a waiting list. So there are people sitting around outside the main session, and I sat with some of those. I talked to maybe 4. I got the email of one, and I talked to another guy who was a former journalist, or still a journalist, just in other languages before this one, and he seemed quite an interesting guy. I didn't find any who were really into creative writing, but it seems like it could be possible to have quite a large group if we were willing to do a little bit of repair work on people's sentences. The assigned exercises were 10 minutes of free writing, first of all, people saying what they did on Halloween, so I could sit there at that time and write on my own story projects, and it tied in a little bit to what I was doing actually. Then they assigned people to do an exercise on assigning proper verb tenses. I found that partly educational because I wasn't aware of all the terminology for verb tenses in English. Then they had an exercise where you're given 10 sentences and given the task of putting them in proper order, which I thought might be the basis for a possible writing exercise for creative writers too. Perhaps everybody there could write one sentence on some sort of theme, and then we'd switch them around and see how we'd all arrange them to create another story. There was quite a bit of there was talking in between. There were 4 volunteers who went around to try to help people with their English, and they had to serve over 25 people, so they had to cover a fair bit of ground, but they seemed to get to everyone. It could be faster, and they could allow more people into the class if they had more volunteers, so maybe that might be something we could consider. I found that doing a little bit of talking about someone's writing was fun to do, and not a lot of effort, just fixing a sentence or two here and there. And it was a wide selection of people, mostly somewhat younger, and gave me a good chance to meet other people. I got to talk to only about 4 of them, 3 or 4 of them altogether, because I didn't have access to the main space, and then when the meeting broke up, people left more or less all at once, so it would be a lot easier to get around to people if we had more people there available to talk. I think it's worth a try having it as a writing location, because virtually anywhere in the library is less noisy than the writing location we've been using because of all the echoes and the toilet flushes and so on. And there are talking periods too for the group, so if we manage to get started early enough, we could talk while they're talking, assuming there are enough empty seats around the main area where they're officially designated for meeting, and that seemed to be possible. There may be 5 or 6 seats, so I think it could be possible for us to do the phases of our meeting and coordinate them somewhat with what's going on. So it seems like there are possibilities, and if we are willing to do a little bit of editing work, we would have a far bigger base of writers to draw upon. The question is whether we want to expand the group to people who are not doing creative writing, because most of the people there are not.